Hey folks, Eddie from Totally Wired Guitars here, and today we're taking a look at this fully upgraded Mascis Jazzmaster. Now, I'm sure a bunch of you out there are scratching your heads thinking, that's not a Mascis Jazzmaster, and that's because we've changed pretty much all of the DNA of this guitar. Only the body from the original Mascis remains. And this has undergone a series of iterations. And if you've been following on Instagram, you've seen some of that journey. I'm going to share some of that with you here today. It came to me with the pickups and pick guard already upgraded. It had the stock neck, as well as the stock vibrato and tune-o-matic bridge. We've got some Curtis Novak JMV pickups, which are some of the best on the market. So he had a bill of work for me that included wanting to upgrade that tremolo to an AVRI unit, something that I encourage everybody with a Squier to do. I'm going to start to sound like a broken record over time because it is single-handedly the biggest and most noticeable upgrade that you can make to a Squier. If I could only do one mod on a Squier and keep everything else stock, I would most likely change out that tremolo to at least an AVRI unit, because it just makes tremolo usage, if you're a tremolo lover like myself, it just makes it much more of a pleasure to play. It's smoother, it's more responsive, it's more stable, there's more mass, and it's just a better crafted, better machined unit than the, the janky import unit that comes stock on these guitars. Once we had upgraded that, we had then done a mod to the bridge that entailed basically grabbing one of Nova Custom Guitars bridges. And in case you don't know Nova Custom Guitars, look him up. He's got a storefront on Shopify as well as on Reverb. He sells the best budget option Mustang bridges with a 52 millimeter string spacing in both 7 1/4 and 9.5 inch radiuses. So if you're on a budget right now but want a really stable and well-crafted bridge, definitely check out Nova Custom Guitars. I'm not sponsored or anything, and they're only 40 bucks. So it's a no-brainer if you don't want to spend, $100 on a new bridge, but just want your, maybe your Squier offset or your Ventera or whatever bridge that maybe came with the original threaded saddle bridge from hell. The Nova Custom Guitars bridge is a wonderful option. Anyway, the original bridge mod that we did to this entailed us prying the legs off of the Mustang bridge, then taking a drill bit to open up the holes that were left so that you could then drop the base of this bridge over the existing tune-o-matic posts that were left here. And that resulted in a nice, stable, and more vintage feeling bridge experience, while avoiding a lot of the the difficulties that a traditional rocking bridge poses. And it actually did rock a bit because that plate would sit on the tune-o-matic posts. When you would use the tremolo, it would actually rock a little bit, but it would always return to center. So I really, really highly recommend that version of converting a tune-o-matic or an adjust-o-matic to a Mustang style bridge, because that whole returning the center thing every single time is huge. It's one of the biggest annoyances that I have with the rocking bridge design, is that it just almost never returns perfectly to center, even with a good setup, even sometimes with 11 gauge and above strings. It comes down to the construction of the thimbles being used, the circumference, the diameter of the legs on the particular Mustang bridge or Jazzmaster bridge that you're using, and also the size of the little height adjustment grubs, and also how pronounced the sort of conical, usually at the end of these thimbles, they come, there's almost like a cone-like shape on the inside that these height adjustment grubs are supposed to sort of like lock into. So it's hard to sort of be able to predict if your combination of hardware is going to result in a perfectly centering bridge. And everybody knows that the necks is one of the biggest reasons that people love the Mascis Jazzmaster. But my client, as much as he loved how that iteration of this guitar played and sounded, the matching headstock bug gave him a little bite. And I had shown him a picture of another friend of mine's project where he mated a Ventera 60s Jazzmaster neck with a Mascis body. And as you can see here, the colors are pretty damn close between the two. Dare I say, almost a perfect match. But he wasn't happy with the super light colored fretboard that this originally came with. And so, out of the back pocket came out the magic Dookie, as I like to call it, the Monty's Guitars, Monty Presso Relic Wax. This stuff is gross. It's like shoe polish plus wax plus coffee. I don't know. It smells really earthy. It looks like dog doo-doo. It feels like you're handling dog doo-doo. And it makes a friggin' mess. In case you've never heard of Monty Presso before, basically what you do with it is you slather it on like you're marinating a fucking turkey or some shit. And then you leave it on for a number of days. At least that's how some people like to do it. We had initially left it on for about a week and then cleaned it off, and it made that light colored Pal Ferro. And you can tell this is the color that it used to be because there is finish over that, and we did not want to sand that back to match. And you can now see what the rest of the neck looks like. It's a much more of a chocolatey brown. Now this is after 2 passes of Monty's, so we had the Relic Wax on here for a total of 2 weeks time, and it got pretty dark, right? It looks about as dark as some rosewood fretboards that I have seen on Fenders from the past decade or so. It's definitely not ebony dark like some of the Japanese necks that I've been seeing, but it's a nice color, and I think that my client is going to be happy once he sees the results of this in person. Now, the second thing that we did differently on this next iteration was we wanted to try to investigate whether or not we could get away with a traditional rocking bridge. Now that becomes a problem because while many years ago, the company Stay Trem used to make conversion thimbles for these made in China, Indonesia, Mascis Jazzmasters, but as well as your classic player, your Ventera 60s modifieds, all of the ones that came with adjustomatic bridges. Those thimbles worked for because they were wide enough and thick enough to fit in the holes left by the adjustomatic or tune-o-matic bushings. Now, even though the method that I had before of prying the legs off of a Mustang bridge, drilling the holes open, and dropping it on top of the tune-o-matic post was really, really successful and really stable, I started to see on Offset Guitars and other forums some folks claiming that if you take the original bushings from the Tune-o-matic and insert or thread in an M8 sized grub, this is what a typical Tune-o-matic or Adjust-o-matic bushing or insert looks like. It is threaded on the inside, and that's how the post screws in. And you would think that that threading goes all the way down to the bottom, but it does not. This textured section that you can see here is basically as far down as the threading goes. So it leaves a good, like, almost like 9 millimeters or so where it's unthreaded. Now, the solution that had been presented on these forums was that if you take an M8 sized grub and insert it, thread it into the bottom of this bushing, and you can see just how recessed. This is like barely even threaded in here, okay? Barely even threaded in, but you can see just how recessed that is. If you try to just drop a Mustang or Jazzmaster bridge down these while they're still installed in the body, you can see that, firstly, there's no bottom to these, right? So there's nothing for these legs to catch, and the actual hole in the Mascis Jazzmaster body is quite a bit deeper than this even still. So what happens here is you can adjust the legs to about as low as low as they can go to give it the highest height, but you're still not going to have enough height, to clear your pickups or to even clear an unshimmed neck. And so it made sense that this combo, giving this thing a bottom, could potentially give us a viable solution. But unfortunately, after, a lot of testing, even with these legs to a Mustang bridge fully recessed into the posts, this thing would sit too high because it could only go down as far as the threading goes, because that little M8 grub that you just put down in there is going to stop it. You can see just how thick the diameter of this M8 grub is, and it's about the same circumference as the leg of a Mustang bridge. So of course, even if it's sitting, basically just holding on via one turn of the thread, that grub itself is going to stop the bridge from going any lower. And it doesn't matter how deep the grub is either. You're only going to be able to go down as far as the threaded part of this bushing is concerned. So that went out the window, and I had notified my client that I think the only option for the 7 1/4 radius bridge that we were going to have to install on this, because the Ventera is 7 1/4 radius, would be to just drop the bridge base down on top of the posts again, the way that we had done the last time. But I was curious. I was like, there has to be something. I had reached out to Mastery because they make a conversion thimble for their M10.1 bridge, the newer version of the Mastery bridge. And unfortunately, they do not sell those thimbles separately outside of buying them with a bridge. And State Trem no longer makes them. So I started to search. I started to see if there could maybe be a prefab option, something that is 12 millimeters in diameter that would perfectly be able to drop into this hole. And sure enough, a long search on the old Amazon resulted in me finding these. Now, I could have been a total capitalist and gate-kept these shits for myself and charge you guys an arm and a leg, but that is not the kind of guy that I am, folks. And what this is is basically female part of a weld-on barrel hinge. And while this is a couple of millimeters shorter than the depth of the hole left by the tune-o-matic bushing, it totally works. As you can see here, right, with this recessed into the body now, you would have to adjust the legs fairly high. This is how high those legs were, the height adjustment screws were set when this was previously installed on this very guitar. And you can see that they actually do sit inside of these cups, but the end result looks like this. So you can see that that is the typical height that I like to have between the pick guard and the base of a Mustang style bridge, about 2.5 to 3 millimeters away from the guard. This thing now perfectly rocks when you use the tremolo, and it feels good. It feels really good. It feels really, really stable, and it feels much closer to a traditionally spec'd Jazzmaster now, which, you know, some people might like. In the case of my client, that's definitely what he wanted. And it delivers. It delivers. And guess what? A 6-pack of these things is only like $10. I will put the link down below so that you can buy them yourselves. I had tried a taller version of these. Unfortunately, though, the hole was a little too shallow, and I don't have a lathe to be able to dig any deeper, and using a drill and a vise was a little too difficult. It wasn't really giving me the results that I wanted. So these shorter, like 21 millimeter female part of these weld-on barrel hinges fits the bill. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. My client doesn't live too far away from where I work, so he's going to take advantage of that 30-day guarantee that I have, try it out, see if he likes it. And if he doesn't, we can always go back and do the other way of mounting a Mustang bridge to a tune-o-matic loaded offset. But yeah, this is a phenomenal guitar. I'm not sure how much the total cost of upgrades that went into this thing is. I'm going to go ahead and guess $250 for the pickups, probably another $50 for that pick guard, so $300. Another $100 for the tremolo, so $400. Another, $40 for the bridge, so what? That's $440 plus another $350. So that's a whole nother guitar. That's a whole nother guitar, right? $450 plus $350. That is $800 right there, right? That's a whole nother guitar on top of this. And is it worth it? Is it worth it? That is a hard question to answer. That really comes down to the guitar player. This likely is going to be a guitar now that my client is going to hold on to and cherish for some time to come, because a bunch of work, custom work that he had requested happened with this. That definitely makes this guitar a bit more special than just an off-the-wall Mascis or an off-the-wall Vintera Jazzmaster, right? This combination of components is not something that you can just grab and go and find. And I love that about this. I love it. I love these Frankenstein, builds or parts casters, whatever you want to call them. And I can really feel, even as compared to stock Vinteras, which I love, this combination of having the 7 1/4 radius neck, right? Chunky C vintage style, mid 60s style neck with this, some people don't like this moved up tremolo business on these Mascis and Classic Player. But I don't know, it's got its own vibe. It's got its own mojo, and I dig it. I dig it. And it's a very, very playable, very, very comfortable Jazzmaster. Now, anyway, that's it. I hope this was helpful to you all with regards to how these mods were done, how big of a difference these mods made to this guitar. A couple of different solutions for how to convert a Tune-o-matic bridge to a Mustang bridge, even without proper conversion thimbles. One caveat that I did want to mention here is that this is only going to fit a Mustang or Jazzmaster style bridge. The inner diameter or inner bore of this, unfortunately, is not big enough to accommodate even the Johnny Marr American Pro bridge, that 7 1/4 radius American Pro bridge. This will not accommodate a stay trem bridge, and this would not accommodate a mastery bridge, but this would work on a Jazzmaster bridge. It would work on a Mustang bridge, and it would work on a tough set bridge too, because those have, thinner legs. So, I'm not sure, Hallen makes a wonderful bridge that's intended to drop right onto the existing Tune-o-matic post. They are working on some conversion bushings of their own to be able to rock, both rocking and fixed bridge setups on these Mascis Jazzmasters. I think that's about it for this one. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel to grow. And on socials, don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars modding tips.